You're listening to the Apple Insider Podcast.
Hold your breath, everyone. It's another exciting episode of the Apple Insider Podcast with William Gallagher and me.
I'm holding my breath. I don't know. I'm conflicted now. Do I say hello? Do I hold my breath? What's going on? There's too much happening. Hi.
Too many instructions for you to process, right?
Frankly, yes.
I know.
I'm a cereal kind of guy. That's what I am.
Yes. But what kind of cereal? Hot cereal? Cold cereal?
At least you didn't go the killer route, which I thought might be foremost on your mind. But yes.
Can't say I didn't think of it, but I know you.
Okay. Right. So I've got away with that. Anyway, that's a word that crosses my mind a lot when we talk at the start of these shows. Anyway.
What, killer? Killer? Killer crosses your mind a lot when you start these shows. I should be more concerned. Well, Monday feels like a long time ago, doesn't it?
It really does. I mean, I enjoyed it. I thought it was interesting. But yes. Hang on. Has Apple released any hardware since then? No. Still feels like the keynote before last. Well, it wasn't really a keynote, was it? It's less what Apple would normally call a presentation.
Keynote?
It was the upfronts. The television marketplace upfronts. Here's what we're coming in the new season kind of stuff. So very different for Apple, but I enjoyed that.
'Twas the week before keynote and all through the house. Not a retail store was stirring. Not even
Except
my
for the one
HomeKit
that
house. Yeah.
Sent me my AirPods 2.
Hey, how do you like those things?
I utterly love them. There's a thing on Apple Insider sometimes with reviews where you just give a score just so you can have a quick glance. What is it? And I forgot to do that. And Mike, editor, was saying, "Well, I've read it. Obviously, you like it. Is it 4.5 out of 5, or is it 5?" And I told him 5 all the way. I adore these things. Utterly gorgeous. In fact, my pair are currently charging on my Anker key charger right next to me.
And how have they changed your life?
Immeasurably for the better. I'm actually not the person I was just a few days ago. I'm actually a little conflicted because I love my HomePod now. I splashed out on a HomePod when I couldn't really afford it. Now I splash out on AirPods too. I'm seeing a pattern here. So is my accountant. But I've realised that when I'm in the office working, the HomePod kind of fills the room, and I really like that. But when I'm out, or if I really need to concentrate, the AirPods kind of fill my head. And there's a particular track that there's always one song that's really in my head. And at the moment, it's Kate Bush's cover of Elton John's Rocket Man. She's just re-released this. And the original is very, very old. And I love it to pieces on the old AirPods. But on the new, I swear I could hear faults like the original must have been done on vinyl. It reminded me of some recording problems I used to have when I'd tape vinyl onto it, and they're just not there on the old ones.
It's interesting that you said that song, because a minute ago when you were talking about it, I thought for sure you were referring to the lyric, "I'm not the man they think I am at home."
Oh, right. Well, I told you it's in my head. Wow. Okay, that's seeped into me. I mean, I don't know that a lot of people know the song because it was released in '91, the Kate Bush version, and only just come out on a new album of hers. It's a reggae version of the Elton John and Bernie Taupin story, and it's just great. It's totally changed the song, and it's very faithful to it. So love that. It's also very clear on her voice, which is the reason I excused myself listening to it over and over on different headphones. The precision of hearing her little breath at the end of certain keywords. It's just exquisite listening, and particularly on the AirPods too. I was told that they were better. I wasn't expecting to really notice a difference as much. As
intriguing. Very intriguing.
Oh, and sorry, I should say the Hey Siri stuff. I thought, what? So? And now I've got it. I already had one of my AirPods set up so that I could double tap on it, do Siri and do the stuff now, and that was fine. And then I put this in, and you no longer have to do that. And because I was swapping back and forth, writing the feature, testing them out, I had the old AirPods in, and I couldn't remember how to get Siri. The new way, just talking, is so right that I couldn't remember. I had to stop. I froze on my stairs thinking, is it one tap? Is it two taps? Is it this one? Is it that one? And in the end, I just put away.
So that thing I was talking about a couple weeks ago where I was saying that at some point you're going to be so used to the audio part that needing a screen will fade into the background and you'll just access it for the spare uses you need it for, as opposed to doing voice first all the time.
Yeah, you're still much further along this route than I am. But this whole ambient computing phrase that I heard last year and I've become quite addicted to, I really like it.
Yeah, you'll catch up to me.
Yeah, there was one point where actually I was playing the Kate Bush song far too loud because I was listening to the range of it. And it's absolutely loud. It was actually hurting my ears, and I was still able to quite casually say, the magic words, call up Siri, and beg it to turn the volume down. And I loved that discontinuity. Normally with headphones on, you shout, but this time I knew I could practically whisper, and it would do what it's doing. Not always, by the way. I dictated a really long text, and after I'd finished, Siri just told me what the track was that I'd been listening to. I was like, I can't remember everything I just said.
Whoops.
But most of the time, yes. Maybe we should have gone for a 4.9.5 out of 5. Knock it off for that. But
yeah. One of the things that I was thinking about after we had the chat and after we had the event was, the Apple Card. The Apple Card is interesting. So we think of Apple as being the intersection of liberal arts and technology.
Absolutely. Yes.
Supporting music, supporting television, supporting creativity, supporting publishing, supporting photography, right? In many, many ways, it adds up that yes, that's exactly where Apple is. That's how you can define is this an Apple product or is this not an Apple product? And Apple Pay never quite exactly fit into that, and the card squarely does not fit into that.
Why don't you think it fits? I mean, I'm not disagreeing. I just haven't thought about it in these terms.
I like Apple Pay for its security and convenience, yes. I like the idea of the Apple Card for the visibility that it gives into your finances. And I think personal finance is one of those things that is not taught well and that people have horrendously bad habits for. But this card, there are a lot of good reasons to criticize it, right?
Well, I have the thing that I desperately don't want to look into my finances. One has enough nightmares anyway. So I haven't thought about this. What's the failing with Apple Card?
Well, so first of all, the first thing about it is that they said that it would have very low fees, right?
Yes. Yeah.
They said that they wasn't going to have any international fees, which is nice. They said that it wasn't going to have other, that I forget all of the fees. They said it wasn't going to have these fees. And they also said it would have low interest rates. And they didn't really tell us what those were. And so people started looking into it. And the Apple Card webpage says variable APRs range from 13.24% to 24.24% based on creditworthiness.
Okay.
Those are not
that
low.
Seems a lot, but
Those
I don't know how
not...
that compares. I'm trying to remember. I don't tend to use my credit card very much. It's just like an emergency thing. I use debit cards and things here. I don't know what's the average rate. I really don't know.
Those are pretty much the average interest rates. The 24% is where you're very much not creditworthy, and 13% is not low.
Okay.
5% is low. 13% is right about the median. It's nothing special.
Okay. I suppose Apple was unlikely to stand there and say, it's nothing special, but there must be some middle ground between that and low. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, or actually delivering on what low is, as opposed to, interest rates in line with the rest of the industry.
Yeah, that would have done it, wouldn't it? Good point. Okay, I wonder why they chose not to. Well, sorry, that's a silly thing to say. They chose not to because it sounds better getting it, but it's still...
Right, but normally, there are other people who have been comparing with the rewards offers, and the rewards offers are very much kind of meh. There is no hotel or travel reward for it, fine. The 2% is the same as you'd get from a Citi Double card. So
I don't know
there's
what that is, but I take
nothing,
it as a US type of card.
It's a U.S. Citibank card that gives you 1% when you purchase and another 1% when you pay it off. So you get your 2%. Okay. And it's a little bit better from Apple in that you get it daily as opposed to when you get paid off. But it's nominally about the same thing. The 1% from using the physical card is not competitive, and that makes sense. There are people there are physical cards out there that offer 1.5% and 2% for using the physical card, but Apple wants to get you away from using the physical card, so they incentivize you to use the app. Fine, they incentivize you to use NFC Apple Pay, but it's just on the whole not an amazing deal. It's the same as everyone else's deal.
What about the stuff you mentioned of greater transparency of all your transactions? And I have to say, it sounded good to me, except for the fact that I was also very conscious it wasn't coming to the UK. I mean, we believe now that it is, but it isn't coming for a while. So I, paid more attention to other things. So what did I miss on that?
That's the best part, is the transparency. First of all, there are line items that you get on your statement that make no sense, that you have no earthly idea what those actually are. And they're going to use machine learning to tell you what those are. So that instead of the obscure name that the payment processor uses, you'll find out that it was in fact the petrol station that you were at, right? Or the store that has no name that you remember, but they lay it out for you and you can see it on a map and all stuff like that. So that'll be good. The other part is the categorization, where they will go ahead and categorize your statement so that you can easily see where the bulk of your spending goes. And that's halfway there to helping guide people to better habits. The other thing that they do that is kind of guiding people to better habits is the figuring out how to pay it off, and how to pay it off as opposed to staying in debt forever. Mm-hmm. Right? Because, well, that's required to be on credit card statements here, what the payoff amount is, and, not just what the minimum payment is, but how to pay it off over time faster. They will actually have the ability of the app to guide you to that. And that's a good thing. The numbers for people carrying credit card debt in America are not good. The average is something like $5,000. The median is more like $10,000 that the average person carries. And I know I'm getting that not exactly right because I'm just doing it off the top of my head after having looked at an article about it earlier this week. But it is staggering.
In that range. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I could look it up, but I'm not going to waste anyone's time doing that. What we know is that there are plenty of people who carry debt. There are plenty of people who have never been formally educated in personal finance or how to avoid that kind of thing. Yeah. And it's a real problem. Now, are those people the same people that are going to have iPhones and going to have Apple Pay set up and going to sign up for the Apple Card? Questionable. But some percentage of them will. And maybe those people
Apple can only do what it can do. So at least it could do something for those people who do choose to. I see that makes sense. Yes.
Yeah, but okay. It's just weird. It doesn't normally when you're transferring a card, right? You can transfer your balance from one card to another. There's some incentive to do that. It doesn't feel like there's that strong an incentive to do that here, and especially with those interest rates like they are.
Okay.
Right. I would have been kind of looking for an incentive to transfer a card, because opening up a new line of credit like that is not a small thing either.
No. Okay.
So anyway, I'm not entirely sold on the card. While we were watching the keynote, I was sure I was going to do it. Now that I see what it's more like, I'm a little hesitant to jump on it right away. Do I like the offering? Yeah.
I didn't pay as great a deal of attention to it as I did, say, news and stuff, because I knew I wasn't going to get it. But I'd come away with the impression that I would at least be very likely to sign up. And now you've totally talked me out of it. Thanks.
Look at that. Talked you right out of it. Yeah.
Okay. Right.
Bummer.
Oh, that's
I know.
Nice. And I'm the guy who keeps buying music stuff from Apple that he can't afford. So, there we go.
There you go. I mean, I'm less hot on news for myself. I'm kind of interested in the TV services program. That's where I'm at.
I think there's some good shows, but I said to you, this is like the upfronts. I'm used to that from writing about television and stuff. All the networks saying, these are the brilliant shows we've got coming. But at least when a network does it, they'll tell you when the show's going to be on. because they're usually doing it for advertisers. No, they're always doing it for advertisers, and that's something an advertiser needs to know. When's it going to be on? How are people going to see it? With broadcast television, they already know how they're going to see it, and I suppose now we know it'll be through Apple TV, but when exactly is a big detail.
Well, it'll be through Apple TV, Roku, Amazon,
oh, yes.
LG, Samsung, Vizio, Sony. I'm impressed by that, and actually, we've run a couple stories. So, skipping ahead in my list of things, the Roku CEO said that Apple TV Plus service had to be on rival platforms in order for it to grow and succeed. So Roku CEO Anthony Wood suggested that the decision to offer the app for smart TVs and rival streaming platforms was a way for Apple to work around the Apple TV set-top box's small market share. And he was on CNBC, and he said it's purely behind design. It's purely due to Apple finding the audience they need for the streaming services.
Right, and he obviously knows more about it than I do. But you say Anthony Wood, and the moment you said that, I remember him talking quite candidly last year before, about how Roku is not in the set-top business; it's in the viewer business.
Yep.
It subsidizes and stuff. I think he has a very particular take on the market, but that's vastly more informed than mine. So, yeah.
Well, Roku's an interesting thing, because let's talk about Roku for a minute. So, early on, when Netflix realized that they were in the movie business, not the DVD by mail business, they designed in-house a streaming box.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, right.
Let me tell you. Let me tell you the story here.
All right.
It was a square box with little vents in the top, and had a remote with a sort of circular set of arrows around its D-pad, kind of thing. And they'd worked on this thing. They got it going, and it was the Netflix box. And they got close to release on it, and they scratched their heads and stopped and said, "Wait a minute! If we release this thing, it puts us in competition with all of the DVD and Blu-ray players that can also play Netflix. We don't want to compete with all the different places that we basically are distributing our service." And so they handed that box off to a small company that was in the business of audio streaming.
Mm-hmm.
Your chair is squeaking like crazy.
Sorry. Yep.
It's impossible.
I see where you're going with this.
They handed that box off to a very small company whose business at that time was entirely around streaming audio, called Roku. And so Roku got into the streaming box business solely because Netflix handed them the design and everything they needed to go.
Can we just
and the very first
line?
Roku box was a Netflix box, yes.
Handed. I presumed there was a sale involved.
I didn't say whether or not there was money interchanging hands or how exactly that worked, but basically the prototype box and the box that was released, identical, except that the original prototype box has a red label on the front, and the released box has a purple label that says Roku on it.
Okay.
Same plastic tooling and everything.
Just curious to know whether Netflix kept any kind of interest in this afterwards. Because Roku is the top-selling box, isn't it? Or is that Amazon now?
I'm not sure. Haven't looked. But interestingly about it, Netflix after that, they still kept it up to date for a long time. But the way that Netflix tests their stuff is on PlayStation primarily. When they want to introduce a new interface, they do it on a PlayStation kind of thing, and all those people get the new interface, and then everyone else gets the stable one.
Okay.
But it was interesting to me, so Netflix had to use Roku to get their stuff more widely distributed and not compete with those distribution channels. And now Roku's saying Apple's doing the same thing, basically.
I've not actually used a Roku set, but when I wrote about what he was saying, I was working through, I can't remember what it was now. I learned about how you navigate through Roku, and I found it really kludgy. And Netflix is substantially better, but Apple TV is an order of magnitude better still. So,
the Roku stuff is okay, right? But it's very much oriented around trying to navigate it, like you found. What Roku does best is search, where if you're searching for a program, they will surface it from the services that you have paid for first.
Oh, that's good. Okay. So I've told you before, one of the reasons I dislike the Apple TV app is it keeps chucking at me recommendations from Amazon Prime. And I've realized it's because at one point I had a trial Amazon Prime thing. So telling it that I haven't, I can't remember now if I managed to pull it off or not. I just gave up in the end. Sure.
Right. So Roku believes that Apple TV TV Plus needs to be on rival platforms for growth and success. And to some extent, I agree with them. However, the thing that I still have difficulty with is the smart TV business, because smart TVs are almost universally terrible. In every instance where anyone's ever asked me, I've recommended getting a streaming box, any streaming box, versus what's built in. Because the built-in stuff is generally horrible and never updated.
Oh, you're right. That makes sense. Yes. Yeah, I can't even remember. I do have a smart TV. I have a Samsung something, and I've realised every now and again I switch it on and it tries to get me to use Amazon or something. I just go straight to Apple TV on it, and I skip all of that stuff. So I've no idea if it's any good or not. But, okay.
Yeah. And we'll see what people do and if people use it. And, of course, Apple will certainly know if people are using it, just in terms of...
Yeah. Sorry, my mind went off in two directions there because I was reading different things. One is, I see Roku's point, but it's the Oprah Winfrey quote, isn't it? They're in a billion pockets, y'all. A billion pockets. I think they have quite a reach already, but I obviously see what it means they need more. And the other one is, I heard a story that one of the channel providers, is saying that they expect to get some sort of data about people using the service, and that's very un-Apple.
Well, I was going to talk about that just now. So, Randall Stevenson, is AT&T's chief.
Oh, right. Yes.
And what he was saying was interesting. Well, he was talking with CNBC's Andrew Ross Sorkin at the FinTech Ideas Festival on Wednesday. And he seemed sure that outside distribution deals with internet services like Roku and the Apple TV channels would include viewer information. And he said, access to customer data is critical and foundational to AT&T's overarching media distribution strategy. And he sort of heavily implied that all deals concerning Warner Media properties would have some kind of data sharing provision. And Sorkin said, well, does that include Apple? And Stevenson said, just pick the one you want to pick. We will have access to data. It's critical to everything we're trying to do. It's critical to the content creation algorithm. It's critical to advertising delivery. It's critical to marketing. It's really critical to everything we're trying to do.
What is the matter with people today, though? Can't you just say yes, rather than this? Okay.
Well, first of all, Stevenson is generally has been horrible as AT&T's chairman. He's been, in every case where there's been something that could have possibly been a user benefit, his attitude has been, we have to do something terrible to the users. Users are using more data, throttle them. Users are using more data, bill them higher. In no case was there ever a case where Stevenson did something that actually had a strong user benefit. It's always been, what is the benefit to Randall Stevenson?
Oh, as opposed to what's the benefit to AT&T? So he's not a corporate man. He's a man. That makes no sense.
Well, it's also a little bit about what's beneficial to AT&T. But now, Stevenson does things besides this. Stevenson is also the chairman of the Boy Scouts of America, which, as our listeners will decide for themselves whether they feel that's a good or bad thing. But, he's certainly given time of himself besides just doing what's in his own self-interest on his own. But this is interesting that despite Apple's strong reassurances about privacy, that he's insisting that they'll have the data no matter what.
Well, now hang on. Let's. I can see a possible answer here, depending on where the source of the material you're watching. I mean, literally the source at the moment you're watching it on Apple TV. Is it coming direct from Apple servers, or is it being relayed through them? In which case, it's coming off of Warner's servers, so they know what the traffic is. Is there a way that they can at least get some sort of brute forced data out of that?
All right, so let's think of it like this. If you're using the HBO app HBO Now, HBO Go, whatever, what have you. That can have a client identifier in it just as much as a browser has a signature. A browser will say, hey, I'm Safari, I'm running WebKit, this is my version, thank you. And may even say what OS version you're on, right? Yeah?
Sure.
So the HBO app can say, hey, I'm HBO this version, running on this version of an operating system, give me the file, give me the video, right? So that's user data, sort of. Right? It's fairly anonymized. It doesn't have a whole lot of customer information to it. Does have a little bit of how long watched, what hours were being watched, kind of thing.
Yeah. So
and you could even, if you were really tricky, say, keep a log of play and pause, and fast forward and rewind, and send me that too.
Right. If you're using the HBO app, if you're using Apple TV and the video is resting on Apple servers, then only Apple has that information. But if it's something like a live channel, I mean, Apple doesn't seem to want to do sports. But
no. They had sports as part of their keynote demo with live sports scores.
Did they? I suppose I just tuned out because it was support. Okay. Are they doing news? I don't believe they are, which is an interesting mix, isn't it, given what else they talk
mostly
about?
I've been seeing the entertainment channels and sports channels, but they had live sport updates as a part of the TV interface.
I know I'm really disinterested in sport, but I'm amazed how much I can tune it out. There's a news story going on here in the UK at the moment about some particular really important man in the football business, and apparently he's been incredibly important here for 40 years. I'd never heard of him before yesterday, and I've forgotten his name today. I don't know what it is with me and sport. I was once briefly working on a sports radio show, so
that must have
that's a
scarred
story
you.
for another day around a coffee. Yeah, I did not contribute to the success of that show. No. How do we get there? Does AT&T or anybody get actual hard data from Apple? This isn't just a technical question, is it? It speaks to the whole ethos of security and privacy that Apple are doing. And I suppose there's a line somewhere. There must be some information.
Well, the minimal is if files are not hosted at Apple. Right? Apple's not going to be hosting HBO files. That's just weird. So at some point, an Apple device makes a request of a stream at an HBO server. But that's about it.
Right. Apple will host all its own shows. I'd be very surprised if Apple releases any ratings data for them. Has it? I don't know if it ever has for carpool karaoke.
Don't know that it ever has.
Who knows? Maybe Planet of the Apps was actually a bigger success than we think.
Seems unlikely.
I only made it through one episode, but that could just be me. So.
Yeah. I want to talk to you for a moment about Capterra. Now, we all have that friend who's the first person to try things, right?
Yes.
For example, you, William, are the first of my friends to try AirPods 2.
Okay. Right.
So, whether they're super trendy or more of a guinea pig, when you're making a choice, it's always nice to hear from someone who's been there and done that. And choosing the right software for your business is no different. Read thousands of real software reviews to help you choose the right software for your business on Capterra.com/AppleInsider. Capterra is the leading free online resource to help you find the best software solution for your business. With over 750,000 reviews of products from real software users, discover everything you need to make an informed decision. You can search more than 700 specific categories of software, everything from project management to email marketing to yoga studio management software, and no matter what kind of software your business needs, Capterra makes it easy to discover the right solution fast. Join the millions of people who use Capterra each month to find the right tools for their business. Visit Capterra.com/AppleInsider for free today to find the tools to make an informed software decision for your business. Capterra.com/AppleInsider. Capterra, that's CAPTERRA.com/AppleInsider. Capterra, software selection simplified.
It's funny how you get used to things, isn't it? like web address is there. You read that out the way everybody knows you would. Everybody who heard it knows exactly where to go. But it has that word slash in the middle. And every time I hear about a new UK government page, it's always something like UK government / healthcare. And I feel like they're telling me something, yeah?
Well, that's certainly something that governments do attempt to do, yes.
Yes. I'm sorry, you just put me down that little line. I like this software search stuff. There's so much out there. I enjoy looking into it, but that's when you haven't got the time.
Well, I mean, the issue is
do?
these app stores, right? If they're just catalogs, then you have no ability to find out what's actually appropriate for your needs. So then you start adding things like reviews. Well, how are reviews any good? Well, you have to have a large number of them that are credible from people who've purchased and used it, right? So then you end up with 750,000 reviews, which is very helpful. And then we start talking about the kinds of things that Apple's talking about, which are how do you surface good recommendations? You know, do you use machine learning to help you try and find the right thing? What's going to be appropriate based on things you've done in the past? You know, it's very difficult. And it's my hope that these app stores all get better based on these kinds of recommendations. You know, that's some of this thing we were talking about with Apple Arcade, is the notion that by virtue of subscribing to the arcade plan, that A, there's more good content, and B, it's easier to see and select and find things.
Actually, I'm glad you brought this up. Apple Arcade. I didn't zone out the way I did with sports, but I'm not a gamer either. I just, over the week since hearing about it, I'm more intrigued than I was. When Apple talks about games, I just think it's not for me. But this time, what sort of games are on offer? Do you need to be a really hardcore gamer to enjoy this?
No. So that's what was intriguing about these, is that these are the kinds of games that might not be possible if it weren't for a paid ecosystem with Apple supporting these developers. That these are games that aren't necessarily shoot 'em up games. They aren't first-person shooters. They aren't endless runners necessarily. That they're games that are more art form. And
okay, so Alto's Journey and
well, Alto is not. Alto's more endless runner in some ways than these. These are more artful, right?
Not actually heard the phrase endless runner before.
Think about something like Monument Valley, for example, or Monument Valley 2.
Monument Valley, that's the one I was trying to remember. That's beautiful. I love that.
Right.
Yes.
Now, that is a game that I would say is both puzzle, story, and art.
Yes.
And it was a paid app. You paid once, you got the full thing, right?
Yes.
And then along the way, you paid again and got more levels when they released more levels a year later, kind of thing. But for the most part, it was a one fee and you got it kind of thing. And that's really what's had a difficult time surviving in this very much free-to-play or freemium with ads or freemium with in-app subscriptions or purchases kind of model. And so that's what's being allowed to flourish here with this Apple Arcade program.
Okay. So actually, does the opposite apply? If you are a hardcore gamer, then this isn't of interest to you?
Potentially. I mean, obviously, it depends on what kind of a gamer you are and what appeals to you. But my thought is that at the heart of it, people make a mistake by making a distinction about hardcore gamer, not gamer, casual gamer, things like that. Because really, at the heart of it, games, even shoot-'em-up games, have a backstory, have cutscenes, have production values, that these things are art. And if you're at all interested in story and entertainment, then there is a game for you. And it's a matter of that game finding you as its audience.
I don't in any way mean to knock games. It just doesn't happen to interest me. But I know I get a lot of people who are sports fans telling me that there's greater drama on the football field than there is in a film. And I'm thinking, yeah, not so much. No.
Let me put it to you like this. Interactive storytelling.
Yes.
Okay. For a long time, we had storytelling. And then somewhere around the 80s, we got Choose Your Own Adventure stories as books.
I'm not a fan of where this is going, but yes, we have these
then
things.
Off and on, we'd had fits and starts of interactive movies. And that sort of culminated with where Netflix was going with Charlie Brooker's Bandersnatch, Black Mirror. interactive storytelling.
And there have been radio shows before.
And radio shows before it.
That let you, change to this frequency to get this part of the story and all that sort of stuff. Yes, absolutely. I don't like it, but it's all there. Well, let me tell you why I don't like it then, very quickly. You have things like, boils down to things like the movie Clue, where there are 3 different endings, I think, or something, and a different murder in each one. That presumes that a story can have a different thing bolted on at the end, that the murderer is the thing revealed at the end. No, the murderer is riddled all the way through. The reasons for something happening, the drama is the journey for it. It's not just a Lego brick kind of storytelling. And in the end, when it becomes very interactive, why am I playing somebody else's interactive story instead of telling my own stories? Yeah, tell me a story or don't.
The Clue movie, they were limited in part by technology of the time, right? They had a VHS tape that they could distribute on, and they could play the ending sequentially. And that was about it. Mm-hmm. With something like Bandersnatch, they can have multiple story branches, multiple trees, all the way through. And so that murder and the reasons for it can change with each decision all the way through. And it's a much more varied thing. And so you really do get unique storytelling all the way through it. Now,
I can't tell you the name of this, but there is an extremely well-known British detective drama that runs in 2-hour blocks at a time, where 5 drafts into the story, I believe they got a better actor and they wanted to do him or her a better part, and so the writer was required to change the murderer, and it was far too late in the production to do else. And this is why I heard about it. The writer was just complaining to me about how dreadful it all was. I don't think most of the time people who are happy with interactive storytelling, I don't think they're really that hot on telling stories. Now, I have friends who work in video games and I think they do it very well, but there is a line somewhere. The assumption that interactive is automatically good is a fallacy.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
A great story is a great story.
I would say that the notion that interactive is automatically better is a fallacy. But when writers set down intentionally to write within these contexts, that it could come out well, it could come out bad. It depends on the writer and what their aims are and whether or not they achieve them. But I think that it's too early to count out interactive as something worthwhile. It's one thing if a writer is forced to do something late in production and it's bolted on. It's something else if you sit down from a clean sheet and say, this is what we're going to set out to do.
Do you remember there was something the BBC were quite boastful about maybe 3 or 4 years ago now, about how they were going to go down the line of incredibly interactive television, that whoever was watching would get a different story that was particularly suited to their taste, like an ultimately based on Amazon's, if you like this, you'll like this, that they would adjust all of that. And they went on and on about how brilliant this was going to be. And nobody in the entire BBC ever pointed out that quite often 2 people are watching the television set at the time, and they had no way of coping with that at all. I think sometimes really dramatists and technologists, we don't always meet in the middle the way we should.
I think that there's also something to shared stories, right? You want to be able to talk with people about what you saw, and if they saw something entirely different, then you lose that communal shared story part of it.
Yes, I hadn't thought of that. That's true.
No, I mean, it used to be things would air at a specific time that the next day you could talk about them at the water cooler at work kind of thing. And in this modern era, we work from home, we work remote, we don't go into work, there is no water cooler. All these things have changed. But at the same time, we do like having some shared experiences, some shared touch points that we can all talk about. Just as you knew Rocket Man and I did too.
Well, yesterday somebody texted me asking had I seen the latest Game of Thrones. And actually, I've never seen Game of Thrones. So I replied back saying no.
The latest isn't out yet either.
I was dropped. Stone cold. The latest that this person had seen. I don't know how I was supposed to know what that was. But
season 8 is coming, but season 8 is not released yet. So,
season 8. I've missed 7 seasons of Game of Thrones. It's probably too late then for me. I should just forget about it. Okay. I've seen the pilot to Lost. That looks really good.
I didn't like Lost. I know a lot of people did, but it wasn't for me. That was one where it felt like J.J. Abrams lost the plot partway through.
Oh, was he involved all the way? I know, obviously, it was exec, right? But it's just you set it up and you move on to something else. I like J.J. Abrams and is it Sarah Brailsford? I hadn't heard of her before. The Little Voice show, the kind of New York music comedy drama one. That actually might be my favourite of the shows that are coming. I mean, it's the one I'm intrigued by the most.
I don't know. I was... There were a few that I was interested in watching. The one about immigrant stories was a good one for me. The one about the blind setting was an interesting... Yeah, that was an interesting premise for me.
By Stephen Knight.
I like the idea.
Yeah, I interviewed Stephen Knight a while ago. I really liked the guy, actually. Very impressive writer. Oh, here's a fun fact about Stephen Knight, co-creator of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire?
Really?
So, yeah. So, I imagine that set him up for life then, really. Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? The creators of that show did. I think there were 3 of them.
Nice.
But he was one.
You know, and we've been talking about TV and controlling TV, and you can clean up your remote control center clutter with Control Center by Cavo. Control Center simplifies your home theater so you can control everything connected to your TV with one easy-to-use remote with voice control. Plug in your streamer, your sound system, your cable, satellite, even game console, and Control Center by Cavo does it all. Don't waste time fiddling with different remotes or weeding through messy search results to get the content you want. One universal voice remote controls it all. So you just say what you want to watch and let Control Center handle the rest. In fact, you can enjoy every second of couch time and easily switch between content without moving a muscle. Let Control Center take your at-home entertainment experience from stressful to simple and enjoy what you want when you want it with ease. Shop now and get 40% off Control Center with promo AppleInsider. That's $59.95, 40% off regular pricing of $99.95. There is a service plan required and the first 45 days are free. Control Center is available at Cavo, CAAVO.com, and Best Buy. Control Center by Cavo, one remote that does it all. The Federal Trade Commission ordered Comcast, Google, AT&T, and others to share full details on their data collection practices.
Oh, I didn't know about this. You mean
the U.S. Federal Trade Commission issued letters to all of these service providers, AT&T, Comcast, so forth, ordering them to detail their respective data collection practices. Now, this wasn't the TV side of things. This was the Internet provider side of things. And the goal is to better understand Internet service providers' privacy practices in light of the evolution of telecom companies into these vertically integrated platforms that also provide ad-supported content. So...
Okay, sounds
AT&T,
okay so
Comcast, Google Fiber, T-Mobile, and Verizon have to identify not just what, how, and why data is collected, but also how long it's kept, whether it's shared with third parties, and what the internal access policies are like. They also have to explain if and how they notify customers about data use, and what options are in place for letting people read, correct, or delete information. Now, this comes on the heels of 4 major U.S. wireless carriers, AT&T, T-Mobile, Verizon, and Sprint, and the controversy last year when Motherboard revealed that it was possible to pay a bounty hunter $300 to track down a smartphone, just based on these third-party data aggregators.
I totally missed that. Wow. Okay. Well, we've got a story right there. Okay. This reminds me, bits of this sound like GDPR that Europe's just gone through, and it's a good thing. So this all sounds great, and all of these nice companies are handing over that information right now.
I mean, they've talked about winding this stuff down in the past. They talked about doing it in 2017. They talked about doing it in 2018. Here we are in 2019, and the Federal Trade Commission is sending a letter because they haven't really made a whole lot of progress.
Right. Okay.
And what happens is that these letters could be a precursor to regulatory action, but they have traditionally shied away from enforcing data privacy with ISPs.
Yeah.
What we don't know is in the past, ISPs were more or less governed by the FCC. But with the end of the net neutrality rules, the FCC said, that's not us, that's the Federal Trade Commission. So here it is. This is the Federal Trade Commission. Let's find out if they do anything about it or not.
Okay. I was having a lovely time till you mentioned net neutrality. All right.
You know what? I only can tell you what's going on. I can't necessarily tell you what the results will be.
Okay, you can build up to it, though. You can ease me into things like this, but you didn't. No, you're just straight in there with the headline. Fine.
I just put you in the boiling pot. That's what happens.
Right. I'm in Britain during Brexit. The water's quite hot enough already.
The butterfly keyboard.
Anyway.
The butterfly keyboard. What do you think about that?
Yes. I'm different to you. I actually like it. I mean, I've used other keyboards that I like more, and I find a peculiar difference between different size MacBooks. But overall, I in the few hours I've had using them, I like the butterfly keyboard just fine. But that's not what you think. You're pointing out that it doesn't work.
The difficulty is not that it does or doesn't work, because it certainly works when you first receive your MacBook. The issue is that for a number of users, after having used it for some time, keys stop functioning properly.
Well, that's just being fussy, really, isn't it?
Well,
no?
When I pointed you to an article written by Joanna Stern at the Wall Street Journal, you said that you had a hard time reading the article.
Yeah, I have a lot of time for her. I actually have a lot of time for the journal. I actually missed the fact that you can. You're going to say this, haven't you? That she wrote without E's and R's, and actually that's what I thought, but she hasn't. She's got a button there to switch the E's and R's back on. Without spotting that, and actually she couldn't have been plainer about how it is. I still managed to miss it. It was a very tedious read. With them switched on, I see her point, and I couldn't possibly disagree. Oh, except for one thing. I used to have a 2009 MacBook with a keyboard that everybody says is brilliant. And I lost two keys. Funny enough, I know R and Q vanished on it. And I couldn't afford to replace it. So I used an external keyboard. Actually, I also used Keyboard Maestro to remap the Q key to something else. Hardly what you'd want to do. But yay for Keyboard Maestro, which is a
right, but this highlights that there is, in fact, a problem, that it is not just something that can be hand-waved across and forgotten about. And it was such that Apple responded to it. Apple went ahead and issued an apology of sorts.
Oh, of sorts. But then I've missed this bit as well. What did Apple say? We're mostly sorry.
The apology basically suggested that it was a very small number of users that are having this problem, and that that it's not that big a deal.
That is so British. This is stereotypical here that if you go to complain about something, you're told, well, no one else has complained before. And like that means you shouldn't.
Yeah,
something.
And that's a typical Apple response, is that even when the support forums are blowing up with people reporting the issue, Apple is, we've never heard of this before. Right?
Right. I mean, Apple must have fantastically better data than anybody else can possibly have about their own machine, so they'll know the actual failure rate, but they can't not know. So, yes. Okay. You've said to me before that they have to be careful how they phrase an apology, because otherwise it can open them up to class action lawsuits.
That's true too.
And things. Is this the same case? I'm
not entirely certain, but they've avoided talking about any sorts of improvements made to the keyboards or to the issue as a whole, other than stating that it affects a very small percentage of customers. And we here at AppleInsider have been tracking keyboard failure rates as best we can since 2016. And we've tried to get the same data going back to 2012 for MacBook Pros. And not saying our data is perfect, but overall, the total number of service calls seems lower for the 2016 and 2017 MacBook Pro in their first years of service versus the older models.
Right, I'm not in any way involved in this, as you can tell from how little I know about it. But I am aware of what AppleInsider has done in the past about keyboard research, and any Apple research, it's really thorough. So I believe that data. Yeah.
Right. So the question then is, if that's the first year, what about the years beyond? Is a valid question. Well, so what we wrote on the site was that the keyboard failure percentages for the 2016 and 17 are unchanged from first year and beyond, and that there's been no surge of people seeking repair after the repair program launched. So the 2018 model has a smaller data set. Failure rate on that is lower than the 2016 and about the same as it was on the 2017. So it's entirely possible that Apple is being clear and saying, yeah, it is a small number of people affected. That doesn't make it any more difficult or change the fact that the keyboard's developed a reputation, whether it's earned or not.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if there's only one person that has a problem. If you are that one person, it's 100% failure rate and an expensive one. Yes. I mean, I cannot conceive of how difficult it is to manufacture these things at all, let alone in volumes. So I'm not surprised there are some problems, but then it comes down to how Apple
Well, you say
responds to
that,
it.
but there are other laptop manufacturers who manufacture tons of laptops in volume.
Oh, I'm
But Apple's is the one that's developed the reputation here. Now,
That's true.
Apple's small percentage of users adds up to tens of thousands of complaints and service calls.
Yeah.
So they should totally be complaining. Yes, they're totally right to be a loud group about it. It is a problem. It is worth discussing. It's worthy of a repair program, and it should be extended to the 2018 keyboard as well, if you ask me. But it won't necessarily impact every machine everywhere. So
Sure.
that's the upshot here. Is if you've got a problem in your 2016 or 2017 MacBook Pro, go get it fixed. If you've got a 2018 and you have a problem, you're under warranty. Go get it fixed.
Right.
If you have a problem with your keyboard, go get it fixed.
Or go my route and have a combination of Keyboard Maestro and external keyboards. You're welcome. Actually, just buy Keyboard Maestro for any excuse at all. Love that app.
Sure you do. I know you do.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. We've been talking in the past about Qualcomm.
Yes.
You love you some Qualcomm, don't you?
Oh, I get up in the morning and I hope they've done something else. I mean, I'm interested. Obviously, I'm just aware that you know it so well that I feel every time I hear about something. Oh, Victor will know about that. What have they done now?
Well, the International Trade Commission, the U.S. International Trade Commission, made a decision on Tuesday based on the recent lawsuit ruling where Apple was found to have infringed on Qualcomm's technology patents. And as Apple infringed on the patent, the judge said it would be acceptable for Qualcomm to be granted their import ban request.
Oh, okay.
Which would mean, if that were to come to pass, right, that Apple would be barred from importing some models of iPhone into the United States.
Right, yeah, but just the US. I mean, the home market. Yeah. Okay. But it didn't come to pass, presumably, from the way you phrase that, because I haven't heard of it happening. So what happened?
Well, what happened is that didn't actually come to pass. So that would be frustrating and annoying. But the U.S. International Trade Commission, in a final determination on Tuesday, nullified the bid for an import ban. And they found that the leveraged patent covering power efficiency technology to be invalid. So there's a notice posted to the ITC website. The commission sided with Apple's reading that a key claiming Qualcomm's patent is invalid based on prior art.
You did, and I feel quite rashly, use the word final there. This is the American legal system. Isn't there always a higher authority or an appeal or something?
Well, it depends on the kind of case and all that. But as far as the ITC, that is a final ruling.
All right, good. Some actual conclusion in something. Okay. I've become used to every case with Apple going on for so long that
and some parts of this will, some parts of this absolutely will, but it's
for now.
yeah.
Okay.
So this decision concurs with the ruling from Administrative Law Judge Thomas Pender, who ruled in September an initial determination regarding the patent and 2 other Qualcomm patents that Qualcomm claimed and were infringed. And so the Administrative Law Judge found potential infringement of the 490 patent, which was the subject of today's final determination. Apple was absolved of impinging on 2 of the other patents, the 558 patent and the 936 patent. Pender recommended against an exclusion order, saying such action would be counter to the public interest. So what he's saying is the import ban is not in the public interest.
Okay, that seems reasonable.
So that's where we've arrived at. Now, there's still a bitter legal struggle, and that's going on around the globe.
Right.
There have already been some findings of damages, right? Mm-hmm. But it's going to just have to sort itself out around the world as we go. So we're going to keep reporting on this case. But as of now, this part is final. There's a full commission review on the initial determination that's slated for July. So this is going to keep going on for a while. You'll hear from more about this.
Is anybody keeping score about the latest match?
Well, that's just it is because there's different kinds of cases and different kinds of infringement, different kinds of things going on around the world. It's a little hard to keep track of it all. So we're basically just going to record it as it goes.
Okay, right. I'm not regretting asking that question at all. But, okay.
Not at all.
Next time on Qualcomm Watch, yes.
Next time on Qualcomm Insider, yes. Well, William, where can people find you on the internet?
I live on Twitter at W Gallagher. I love getting emails to William at AppleInsider.com. Actually, I don't like getting iMessages. I've had a couple this week. I leave messages on over Do Not Disturb, so I've been woken up a couple of times now with messages and things. So I don't like that, but emails to Apple Insider, William at AppleInsider.com. Can't get enough of them. Love those.
I'm at VMarks on Twitter. I'm Victor at AppleInsider.com. We will be back next week. Yes, we will. And William will continue to play Rocket Man.
Oh, you bet I will. Yes.
I know it. Burning out here alone. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, William is burning up out there alone. I want to remind you that you can clean up your remote control clutter with Control Center by Cavo. Plug in your streamer, sound system, cable, satellite, or game console and control everything connected to your TV with one easy-to-use, voice-controlled remote. Shop now and get 40% off Control Center with promo code AppleInsider. That's $59.95, 40% off regular pricing of $99.95. Service plan required. First 45 days are free. Control Center is available at caavo.com and Best Buy. Control Center by Cavo. One remote that does it all.